to the Cinementalists. Noun, plural. Definition, those whose love for movies runs so deep, they can't help but do a podcast about them. Hosted by Colton Robertson and Joseph George. Hello everybody and welcome in to the Cinementalists. Today we cover the fourth installment in the Indiana Jones franchise. This is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It was released on May 22nd, 2008, with a story by Jeff Nathanson and George Lucas and a screenplay by David Koepp, directed by Steven Spielberg. I am Colton Robertson. I'm joined by Joseph George. What's up, homie?
Oh, what up, what up? Always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And on the screen below me that I can see and you cannot, Kay, Beezy, Kyler, Barnett. What's up, buddy?
We must return the skull.
We must. How are we feeling?
Okay.
I knew how I felt because this is probably the second most watched Indiana Jones film for me. I've watched this a lot. It came out when I was 8. I grew up on these movies, and I've returned to it, so I'm intrigued to know how Joe felt as a first-time viewer, and Kyler, how you felt as a first-time returning in a very long time. Let's start with Kyler, since you are the series irregular here. How are you? How are you feeling?
Man, I love these movies because you can always count on them to bring you right in right away, and so coming back to this movie in so long, there's bits and pieces. I can recall little moments, but it's not like The Last Crusade where I can literally, last week we talked about how I was I can practically paraphrase each little 30-minute segment of that movie. I can give you a lot. This one, it's a lot more shaky. I can remember bits and pieces. I can remember certain scenes, but it's very fuzzy and there's not a ton into the details. And man, like I said, those opening sequences, this is another really strong one. Like I said, I think Last Crusade is my favorite opening sequence, and then Raiders right there with it. But man, this one might be I think this one trumps Temple of Doom for sure for me. But just that vintage Paramount logo, and then
and
just
the groundhog.
All of a sudden the transition and there's a groundhog, and then the Elvis kicks in. And you're suddenly it's so 1960s.
Hound dog. Yeah.
And my favorite part is that I loved watching Back to the Future as a kid, and I've talked about this throughout this. It's kind of hard not to with Spielberg's involvement, but just the era of Back to the Future when he goes back to 55 and the upbeat music, the jazzy stuff, and the cars, all of the culture and everything, that's what we're getting here. And I really love that action, that sequence, all of that.
Oh, I do too. And there's a certain, it almost feels like George Lucas never let go of American graffiti a little bit with the opening here.
That's exactly what I was thinking. When there's a sequence with Mutt at the bar when he gets off the train.
Yes.
That was exactly where I was okay, this feels as
it's classic. It's classic Lucas. This is the era he obviously loves. This is the era and this is the most George Lucas Indiana Jones movie. The other one, Spielberg ends up shining through even beyond George Lucas's story beats. This is the George Lucas Indiana Jones movie.
I think now it is clicked on it. I want to come off saying that out of the Indy movies, this is the one that I've enjoyed the least so far, which I thought was not going to happen. But I am not I'm not in the camp of this movie's bad. That's for sure. This is not a bad movie. Right. It's and now that you say George shines through, I kind of had the question. I'm man, this is Spielberg. He is still directing this, but at some points I'm this doesn't really feel like him. I don't know why. And the camera and the stuff, it's still him, but the store or just the at certain
there's
points
an essence to it that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and I was kind of wondering. I'm like, what's the difference? And maybe it is the different era that we are in. It is shot a lot differently, and I think I like just the graininess and just it felt like the first three were kind of dirtier in a sense, and this one's kind of like a cleaned up kind of version, and just a whole different era. And there's a lot of different things that are going on. Like it's super easy to hate the Nazis. You know, that's one thing that's a given. And now, you know, we're entering Cold War era and just, you know, whole commies and stuff like that. And it's not like as easily of a hateable villain. And I like
off rip, it's not as easily hateable. And it's interesting to think about the fact that, I mean, Spielberg and Lucas and a lot of the original Indiana Jones audience did grow up during the Red Scare. You know, like, they did grow up during a time whenever, you know, it was like, those commies, they're here to fucking kill you. You know, like, obviously, a lot of modern sensibilities about communism in general. Obviously, the Red Scare and its effects have not dissipated entirely, but there isn't something inherently evil about communism. There's something inherently evil about the way fascism uses communism, and that's what happened in the Soviet Union. So, like, it's an easily hateable villain, but just not for us. We're a little too far removed from the Red Scare. I saw someone talking about, like, kids who were born in the early 2000s and after cannot know how bad cigarettes were, how bad the world was whenever everyone smoked cigarettes. It was so bad, and now it is so good by comparison that people are worried it will repeat itself because we have no context of how bad it was. Like, I think that there's something about the Red Scare that kind of similarly applies. Like, we know the Red Scare as being like this kind of mythical, almost mythical, like, ousting of people that was paranoid, and, you know, there were some communist sentiments for people that were, but like McCarthyism and the way they went on a tear and taking down any politician who disagreed with them based on the fact that you are an agent of Russia. That is what you are. Like, we can't, like, there's something a little similar happening now, but it's not exactly the same. And I think there's something to us it is more communicable to be able to go, we know we fucking hate Nazis.
Universal, timeless. Yeah. Like, it's
for the most part, sadly, not some circles, not, which is disappointing. But like, it's like communism is not universally hated the way Nazis are. You know what I'm saying? So like, it doesn't inherently give you the same flair as the Nazi.
Well, villain. It's like, it's really interesting to like watch this movie with the Red Scare and like Soviet era, especially earlier, just because. Like, I think back to, like, other things you've seen, like, with Red Scare, and it's like, okay, Stranger Things just recently did this, but it's it's a much older era Red Scare, and so it's interesting to see the difference in, like, there was 2 periods of the Red Scare, and, like, this one is a little bit more, like, I don't know, the people were a lot more skeptical and just, like, the fear is totally different. Like, you feel like in the Stranger Things era, like, and obviously that's played up totally differently, but I just mean thinking about, like, historically, actually, like, the 60s one is way different because there isn't this, like, abundance of technology to know that they could be taking it further technologically, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's like, immediately in this movie, you get Area 51, or Hangar 51, I mean, whatever, and you just see the level of technology we're working with, which at the time, late 1950s or whatever, we literally just watched Indy get freaking launched at, like, the speed of sound practically with no restraints or anything. Like, it's really interesting to see I love the Red Scare era. Like, the Cold War is probably one of the most interesting historical, like, that's one thing that, like, I really love, and especially, like, once pop culture starts crossing into it, That's another thing like that I really enjoy about this movie. Is just the way that they use that era of history is fascinating to me. So
I agree.
They do.
I agree wholeheartedly.
They do a good job of villainizing it, though. Like, it's not like they're clearly the villains of the movie.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I'm not trying
yeah.
to say that it's like it's this it's muddled because like
It's
she's
a
holding
lot
the skull.
nicer. It's a lot nicer to watch Indy kill Nazis. You know, like that's just something you want to see. You know, like that's just like I completely get where you're coming from when you say like the villain just isn't quite. And frankly, like I love Cate Blanchett.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that substantiates her as being like the only villain of the movie she's better than is Temple of Doom, and that's just because Temple of Doom, it's a really racist depiction that's hard to be like, okay, well, this is good, love this, you know. So like that's why like it's not going to stack up to Belloc, who is the mirror of Indy, the dark mirror of Indy, or Julian Glover in Last Crusade. You know, like there's something more personal about that. Like I think the problem is that the people that were expressly representing the Nazis in those movies were secondary villains. You know, like she is representing the Soviet Union. She believes in the Soviet Union. And like, so her beef doesn't feel personal. It feels like she's got a greater purpose, you know, like she has a greater idea at play. And I think that works, but it lacks that oomph that Belloc has as the opposition to Indy. You know, and I think that ultimately it does make the movie suffer a little bit on the villain side, you know. I will say, I think this is, I never have a problem with the doohickeys. I mean the what's it called?
MacGuffin? Or
MacGuffin,
no?
yes,
Okay.
Thank you. The MacGuffin.
You taught me this. I'm glad I'm in the know of it now.
Yes,
but...
yeah. The Crystal Skull, one of my favorite MacGuffins in the movie franchise and in movies in general. I think that's fucking awesome. It's a brilliant idea. I think it's super fun, and ultimately that's why this movie, I come back to it all the time, is that like it's ceaselessly fun, man. It puts a smile on my face. I feel like it has the spirit of Indiana Jones through and through. I think that it does something that Dial of Destiny almost tries to reiterate. They evolve again, another about almost 20 years, 15 years for Dial of Destiny. That one comes post-Vietnam. I will spoil this for you. Shia LaBeouf's character dies in Vietnam.
No, I don't. I'm not gonna lie. I don't. He is his son and all, and like it should be like this prodigal son that I care so much about. But like,
it's Shia LaBeouf. Fuck Shia LaBeouf.
Like he's fun. Like, he does the greaser part well. You know, like
I'm really sorry, but like there are very few things he does that I feel like actually like a lot of what makes Indy so cool and so fun, like he doesn't even come close to doing that. And I guess now that I think about it, he's a little more brash and like abrasive, which I guess is probably a little bit more along the lines of Marion, which is what makes those two so fun together. But it just doesn't translate. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know, you feel like in your head, you're like, there's no way Indy would like just like actually like the things this kid does, and like you see that he doesn't a lot of the time. But I mean, there are
he's far and away even including Dial of Destiny. Mutt is far and away the weakest supporting character in terms of like sidekick for Indy throughout any of these movies.
Here's the thing, like I think if Indy, like if Harrison Ford just would show up to like this movie and kind of like phone it in or just like whatever, like maybe Mutt doesn't really stand out as bad, but like Indy's older and he's still really doing it. Like Harrison Ford is really still like he's got
Dude,
it.
The opening sequence in Hangar 50, like one of my favorite moments in any Indiana Jones movie is I love Ray Winstone. That's why like Shia LaBeouf really stands out as not just Harrison Ford doing poorly. Karen Allen, Ray Winstone, John Hurt, the entire supporting cast does really, really good. He is like obviously the weak link. I love Ray Winstone. He's the guy who double crosses him and then double crosses him and then double crosses him.
Mac.
Yeah, Mac. I love him. I love that actor. And it's at the beginning whenever they are playing chicken with the cars, and Ray Winstone is like, "You don't know him. You don't know him." I'm like, that's fucking awesome. That is a brilliant way to hype up Indiana Jones, and the way he swings up top and runs, like, that's fucking awesome. And like, they do a good job at building the legend of Indiana Jones through the eyes of mud as well. You know, you're a teacher. Part time. I love that. Yeah, like that's awesome, you know. So, Joe, you were talking about something off mic last night after you finished the movie about how the movie felt a little more self-aware than the previous three. Would you mind elaborating on that for me a little bit?
Yeah, it feels like in the previous three, Indy was a human still. Like, and they made him like. I feel like he's just dirtier. Like, he's barely getting out of situations. He's like, I don't know, like, everything just feels more real. And if something's happening to Indy, you know he's going to be safe because he's the main character. But like, you're like, oh shit, he could really, really die here. I feel like he's reached kind of like a legendary status almost come this movie, where those three movies do exist, and the legend of Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, it exists, and everyone knows that coming into the movie. And that happens in the ones before, but they're more kind of aware on it and playing on it now. Like, the part that sticks out the most to me is kind of like whenever they get to, I guess I don't know what to call it, kind of that temple, and then the people coming out of every single place and attacking them, crawling in and jumping in, and he jumps in after them, and then kind of like up on the top, and then the lightning strikes, and kind of like it shows him in kind of all his glory, and it's cool and but like, he comes out without a scratch, like he's fully clean. His kit is like, it's almost like it's like a, not totally the Luke Skywalker reaching the legendary status sort of thing, but it's just there. It's there. Like, it's the stuff outside of the movie that is now being brought into the movie. And it feels like maybe that stuff was just thrown in there because they knew it would get the cool audience reactions, and like, it's cooler for the movie. It makes you feel good, but I don't think that strengthens the movie itself. I think that can only honestly like really hurt a movie story-wise and critically-wise. But as far as like a fan and watching the movie, it's awesome because, I mean, this movie has aliens and pyramids and spaceships and interdimension, like in a crystal skull that is like on it. Like, it has everything cooking, and like 100%. I was smiling ear to ear watching this whole thing. I'm like, okay, this one was made. You know, the writer's room, George sat down, or whoever fucking came up, pitched this idea. They were like, yeah, we're making this one for the nerd, the Joe type people.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I loved like all of that last shot of the fucking temple kind of collapsing into the UFO and then them taking off. I don't know if I've seen this before, but I've literally had a dream in which the Pyramid of Giza, like, fucking started rotating and shit and did this, and I'm like, no fucking shot. I'm like, holy shit,
so
there has to be a spaceship underneath the every pyramid now, or, you know, I don't, like, but it was awesome. It was like, and I couldn't believe I was getting it in an Indiana Jones film, and on one hand, that's really, really cool, but then it didn't feel like Indy full, like, it felt just kind of like we can now, so let's do it. And it's not all bad, but I guess that's kind of where I feel like George kind of stepped in a little bit more, and Spielberg less, you know, his footing on the movie kind of went down a little bit. But
and one thing I really like you talk about building up the legend and stuff, like, at this point, like, it's very clear, like, he's kept on doing, like, going on adventures. He's discussed all the things he's uncovered and done, and everything that we know and don't know, or they reference and allude to in this movie. Like, clearly he's seen and done a whole awful lot of stuff by this point, you know what I mean? But one thing I do like is that I don't know, and, like, obviously this is the most far out, like, kind of, like, I mean, this is beyond, I mean, this is otherworldly type stuff, sci-fi. Like, he's not quite dealt with this, I guess, is what I'm getting at. I mean, the other stuff is historical. As old as it may be and the powers it may hold, like, I don't know if we've seen Indy like kind of hold a fear for what he's gonna uncover the way that he does this. Like, I think in Raiders there is a little bit of fear, obviously, with him and Marion, and it's like, don't look, it's not for us. Like, but it always came across as like more respect, you know. And for this, like, you can see, like, once he looked into the skull and it did the whole thing, you know, the mind reading and all of that stuff that went on, like, and he saw what it did to Ox, like, you can tell there's almost a little bit more of a, like, fear for what he might find and uncover in this one, which I think it's really interesting to juxtapose the fact that our character is as old as we've ever seen him. He's seen and done as much as we've ever seen him, you know, have done. Like, nothing theoretically should really shake this guy much, you know what I mean? I mean, the great thing about it is you build up to those moments where he does kind of have this fear for what he's going to find, but Mutt the whole time is scared of everything else, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Mutt is scared of literally everything. Dead bodies. Indy's uncovered this guy that's been mummified for 500 years. His body still looks great. And Mutt is, like, deathly afraid. You know what I mean?
No, and I love...
So I really do like that, like, trope, or I guess that story bit there, that it builds to that. Because, like I said, he's as experienced and seasoned as you've ever seen him. And yet, like, you could tell from the moment he's at Hangar 51 when they talk about him having, like, examined and studied what they're looking for, whatever it was, 10 years prior, 5 years prior. And, like, Indy just basically mums the word. Now, obviously, it's Soviets. He's not going to just give away information. But, like, you can tell, like, obviously, if he's that deathly afraid to give away this information to them, like, clearly it's something that he's very worried and concerned about being in the wrong hands, I guess. So, I don't know. That's just something that, like, I really liked about this movie is that.
I'm with you because one of my favorite moments is, like, there's something cool about the previous movies in that he always knows exactly what he's looking for. You know, like, this one, you know, it's like the Lost City of Akator. We got to find Ox. You know, like, we'll figure it out along the way. I love when he finds the crystal skull and he's like, what the fuck is this thing? You know, he's like, this doesn't make sense. You know, like, that's cool. And it's cool because that's not something he's typically out of the know on. It's not something, whenever he comes across something, he's like, oh, like, he's in the streets speaking a small tribal language that not many people speak. Was it Incan? Like an old Incan language?
Something like that, yeah.
Mayan, maybe. Like, I know he spoke Mayan.
I know he speaks Mayan, but then, like, whenever he's in the streets and he's like, I ran with Pancho Villa, and, you know, that's actually something interesting. And the reason Mutt as a character works a little more for me is that he is very similar to young Indiana Jones in the Young Indiana Jones movies. So, like, the character itself, I like Mutt. I don't like Shia LaBeouf playing Mutt, you know. And that's one of the episodes of Young Indiana Jones is Indy running with Pancho Villa and his crew. So this was an express reference to Young Indiana Jones.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up, not necessarily the Young Indiana Jones, but the similarities and stuff, because, like, the way that their relationship is written and wove throughout this movie, like, it really should, like, it's a good beat, like, you know what I mean? Like, the bit they do with, like, it's okay, like, you don't have to go back to school, like, don't let anyone tell you different. And then he finds out it's his son, and now it's like, you didn't finish school.
Why'd you let him drop out of school? I love it.
Like, it's good bit, and, like, now that you're saying how similar it is to, like, Young Indiana Jones, like, that makes that bit even better, because it's like, that's so like your dad to, like, get mad at you for doing the things
he dropped out of school, which,
like,
is what Henry didn't like. He obviously went back to school eventually, but he went to go fight in the war, which his dad really didn't want, and he went off on adventures, which his dad really didn't want. And obviously, when he was done, he went to school so he could be a professor like his dad and stuff. But
when did Young Indy come out? So that was before.
This was It was
Kingdom?
in between Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Okay.
It was the late 90s.
Okay, that makes sense because it did kind of feel like they were referencing some things. Like some things it felt like it was just like, oh, it's just in Indy's past and like referencing things. But it did kind of feel like there were some references that I might have been missing.
And and there aren't a ton. There's also there's something cool about Indiana Jones and the way the script is written, where they allude to a larger world that we've never seen. You know, whenever he's like getting kicked out of the college and he's talking to the former dean who decided to resign with him, which is really cool. And he's like, "Where will you go?" He's like, "I'm gonna go to London. I've got this guy out there. I can hang out. I might be able to teach there." You know, like we've never met that guy. We've never been to Leipzig. You know, we've never been like but like it's cool that Indy has contacts all over the world, and you know he has contacts all over the world, and like they allude to that. Never comes up, but it's just like, yeah, I'll reach out to this guy. He even mentions him by name. Like it's just I like little details like that, and that's always really fulfilling for me in anything, but specifically with Indiana Jones. Like, yeah, he would have contacts all over the world. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, we got a whole John Wick situation coming. I guess I still have no idea what's coming with Dial of Destiny, but I'm assuming we're not going to go, secret organization archaeology style. But
not quite.
Whenever you brought up the scene when he finds the skull for the first time, and it is kind of like that. Like, what the fuck are we looking at? He's like,
cut against the grain.
Yeah, he's like, the one I've seen, he mentioned like he's seen one before, but they were obvious, like, it was human made, it wasn't a real thing, it was just a replica, but then he holds this and he's like, this is just out of place, and I think, Kyler, you were talking about how he has kind of known everything before. Like, he finds an artifact and he goes, oh my god, this is the shield of blah, blah, blah. This is exactly what we need. And, like, he knows the artifact he's looking for before he finds it, usually. And I guess he knows he's looking for a skull, or that's kind of the whole thing. But there is this shroud of mystery of where it comes from, what it is. And then he sees it and he's like, oh, this is not man-made. It's something that we have not explained yet. And I think that's a super cool, just the concept of Indy is adventure and exploration and get out there. You can only do so much in the library. Whenever they're going, the motorcycle they slide through, and he's like, you got to get out of the library.
I love that part. I love that part.
Good,
like
man.
it's
good.
So the usual beats of Indy is there, of the exploration and all that, but then they kind of throw in this it's like something unknown to archaeology. There's nothing you can do to encounter this before or even in the field. Like it's kind of just like an out of place artifact, and I thought that was a really cool kind of MacGuffin. It's by far my favorite MacGuffin out of all of them so far. I mean, I hope one of these things legit exists, and because like whenever the skull snapped back on to the alien's body and it just kind of like lined itself back up, and like, it felt like their skeletons, like they got some magic or some shit, but like they would never have any like scoliosis or spine problems because they're just fucking like, they magnetically fucking lock. I don't know. It just feels like their skeleton. Like, I want this technology. Like, I feel like it'd do really well for my skeleton.
Getting into the biomechanics of aliens, talking about this movie, so everyone's clear.
And that's why I think, like, I did have a blast. Like, I was thinking of all these stupid little details while I'm watching the movie, and they're not real. It's like, I know that there's not a spaceship gonna pop out of the Pyramid of Giza, but it's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if on Earth this is how it happened to be? Or like, if there was a skull somewhere that could teach you fucking everything, or I don't like it, but
see, and I love this movie because like there are times where it feels like they do like all there. I don't want to say silliness, but there is a certain level of like silliness / like whatever. I really like the way that they redeem it / earn it because of moments like the end when the spaceship flies away and everything crashes to the ground, and then the water fills everything and covers, and then Ox is like
sand to their footprints or something like that.
A broom over their footprint, a brush over their footprints.
Yeah.
There's a moment early, and like this is, it's Indy at his desk talking to the dean, and he looks the tough year or whatever he says, and it's the pictures of Brody and his dad. And the dean has a line where he's like, he says, we seem to be at the stage of life where, I think he says, like, where instead of
Life
giving,
stops
it
giving
starts
you
taking
things,
away.
it starts taking away.
Yes, yeah. Like, there are still those moments, and this is where I love, like, Indy is so unique in the sense that, like, the score has never once missed. It's always right on the money, and it knows, John Williams is a master at just, like, he knows when to just let it be just there, like, to where, like, that line is what I remember, but when I say it, I can hear the little, like,
the little flare.
You know, he has these, like, he's so unique in the sense of, like, he'll use, like, little twinkly, like, kind of sounds, you know, in those moments, or, like, when it's a whimsical, like, what am I looking at? Like, it's this, like, otherworldly, like,
mystical,
like, you know, I mean, like, he just,
a genius.
he can put a track down that absolutely describes the feeling of whatever you are watching, and, like, it's a marriage made in heaven that he gets to do Indy, because I don't know if, like, anything gives him as much leeway to be like, okay, this is supposed to evoke a little bit of horror, a little scary, and he gets to go with all of the, like, you know, those crawling,
striking,
like,
chords,
yes, and then if he wants to go with, like, the whimsical, what have I uncovered and discovered, you know, like, you have these booming percussion with, like, it's just incredible, man. He's so good, and it elevates everything in these movies. Some of the best.
I'm a sucker for the Indiana Jones theme. Like, I was, like, right around a year ago when as of recording, when Dial of Destiny was about to release in theaters. And now that was a little over a year ago now, even recording. When that trailer was playing in theaters, the trailer would make me cry. Because, like, I would be in the movie theater and I'd be hearing the Indiana Jones theme and I'd be seeing Harrison Ford and I'd be like, oh my God, it's gonna be wonderful. You know, like, every time the theme flares in this movie, it just puts a giant fucking smile on my face. There's a point during the jungle chase where I can't remember specifically what happens, but Indy, like, grabs something and he looks at it and he's like, and like, in the background, it's not even like a prominent ba ba dum ba, it just ba ba dum ba, and then it starts going into something else, and I'm like, fuck yeah, you know, like, it just gets me fucking going. I love the Indy theme, man, and I love the way it's not deployed in a way that's, like, over the top. It's never, they don't rely on it. It's not like every time Indy does something cool. It's sparsely implemented and it's chosen for the right beats, and it's wonderful. Whenever he takes the hat at the end of the movie and like, that's
I don't put that shit on yet. Yeah, come on, he's trying to put that. I thought that was taking the mantle, you know, quite yet. I don't know if that was is that the
I know as a kid
implication?
I always thought that was what they were, like, saying, like, was like Shia was about to do it, and I'm like, please don't, please.
No, they're expressly saying nobody else will ever play Indiana Jones.
Okay. This time, that's what I took from it. Like, I'm old enough now to, like, read between the lines of that. Like,
that makes sense. Okay, because I was like, I thought they were trying to plant the seed of, like, maybe we're going to let Shia LaBeouf.
That's what they are doing whenever he's putting that, and everyone's going, no, fuck, and then Harrison Ford goes, boop. No, sir. And you're like, yeah, you know, like, it's, so when it comes to the very, very, like, the last couple minutes of a movie, The Last Crusade obviously has something else cooking for it, you know, like, when it comes to the ending with Sean Connery and them riding away from the cave. This is probably my second favorite ending of any of the Indiana Jones movies. I will say Dial of Destiny has a really, really good last scene. I won't talk about that, but that movie really ties itself together and ends the franchise. You know, like, this could have been the ending. In fact, probably should have been the ending. You know, like,
are we sure?
Like Dial of
Are we sure? Like, because some people would have said that the third might have been the end, and then this one could have been.
I mean,
but dude, like, he's gonna have to do it, like, tomorrow. Like, he better start
like, that's
tomorrow,
the thing, is that, like, it's a send-off. It's a send-off. And I won't elaborate on why, but there's a specific choice in the literal cut to credits that is the end of the franchise. Like, you can, it's a brilliant choice. I love it.
They Tony Soprano'd my boy. Are we serious?
No, I'm ready. I guess I'm Because it was marketed as the end, right? Is that how, like, did they
Kingdom
market
of
it
the
that
Crystal
way?
Skull or
No,
Dial of Destiny?
Dial of Destiny.
Dial of Destiny was like, and is, Harrison Ford is like, this will never happen again.
Okay.
He never said that during Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It was just like, he did the movie and it was a good return to the character, but he was never like, this is it. You know, like, everything about the marketing. If you can, watch the documentary on Disney Plus. I think I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Timeless Heroes. It's about Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. That is a brilliant fucking documentary. It made me sob, and it will be a post Dial of Destiny viewing. But it's, yeah, dude's done playing Indiana Jones, and nobody will ever play Indiana Jones again.
Well,
as long as.
I mean, I think, like, if you were ever looking, like, Joey, like you said, is it the end? Like, Harrison Ford has not cared for a character or franchise the way he has cared for this one. Like, it just really feels like, you know, him coming back for this last one, and then, like, with what Colton's all saying is true. Like, I believe him. Like, I know obviously he's done, like, I'm not saying he did this movie for money, but, like, obviously it has a price to come back and do it. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do it right if I'm going to do it, obviously. But,
yeah, and that's something
the Marvel
that, like,
money came talking, like, he's taking it. The Star Wars money came talking. He's
Blade
taking
Runner.
It. He hasn't really been, like, happy or excited about him like he has
I've
been
never
for Indy
seen
always.
I've never seen Harrison Ford as vulnerable as he was on the press tour for Indy. Indy 5.
No.
Dial of Destiny, he was like tearing up in interviews. Like he loves this character. If Indiana Jones is ever brought back, I will not watch it because it won't be Harrison Ford. It will be a corporation's money grab trying to do something with Indiana Jones. And I think that there's a world here you can build off. Like, there's a character in Dial of Destiny I would love to see get her own thing, you know? It wouldn't be Indiana Jones, but it would be in the vein of Indiana Jones. And if you want to do something in the vein of Indiana Jones, I'm down for that. But you're not doing Indiana Jones anymore. And that's why, like, the critical reception of this and Dial of Destiny have never been of supreme importance to me, because Harrison Ford loves these movies. Like, it's not even, you know, there's people will talk to, like, the standing ovation Dial of Destiny got at, like, Cannes a couple years ago or last year. It was like 10 minutes and Harrison Ford, like, sobbed through the whole thing. Like people, like, and it's just like, it's so clear that, like, his love for this character has ran so deep for 40 years that, like, and it bleeds through so hard. That's why, like, it's one of those movies where, like, I text Joe last night and I was like, perhaps my love for the movie blinded me to its faults a bit, you know, because I still struggle to find what's wrong with the movie. I know there's things that are wrong with the movie, but, like, I love it, and I can't help but love it. There's an excitement and a frivolousness and just kind of throwing caution to the wind about this movie that I respect. Like I said, I like George Lucas as a story writer. I like him as someone who comes up with concepts, and I'm not a huge fan of him as a director, but as a writer and a storyteller, he's got it on him, you know. And I think that this movie continues that trend for him. I do think it's tonally it is a little odd and warped with Indy, but I will say the tone of this in terms of the MacGuffin and what it's capable of is closer to Dial of Destiny than it is previous iterations. Like, it is, we're still relatively, we're dealing with something, it's funny to say, like, something that could never happen, you know, because, like, none of this could ever happen, you know, like,
maybe.
The Holy Grail. Yeah, maybe. You know, and that's what's cool, is that, like, the Holy Grail, it's like, no, we don't think so, but, like, who are we to say? The Ark of the Covenant. No, we don't think so, but who are we to say? You know, like, that's why, like, when it comes to Temple of Doom, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and Dial of Destiny, there's a little bit more of a far-fetchedness that's, like, it's a little bigger, it's a little grander, there's something less personal about it, it seems. or less down to earth, I should say.
Yeah,
and I think that there's something to it that that's why they are, for pretty universally, the bottom 3 Indiana Jones movies versus Raiders and the Last Crusade. And that's not just because it's not just because of that. Raiders and the Last Crusade are just that fucking good. But
they are good. Yeah, I guess that was my main struggle, is I was comparing this only to the other Indiana Jones movies, and whenever you're doing that, you're comparing it to some peak cinema, and I love Raiders, I love Last Crusade. I don't even know which one I do like more, but
right.
I love those movies, and I have love for this movie, but I'm in the same boat. I don't know what it is that doesn't kind of put it on the same level as 1 and 3. But I think because I don't have this, all the past love and all of the nostalgia and the childhood connections like you guys have with Indy. But I said for Crusade, I said, wow, I kind of feel a little bit of nostalgia now. So I feel like I've entered a mode where I know Indy enough, kind of, and I felt like I was in the know, and the nostalgia was like a sort of there. And this, it plays him up as the legend even more than the last movies kind of do, but I didn't really feel that, the oomph of the first couple. But no, I think it's funny that the previous ones, they're religious artifacts, and it's down to earth. They're real, that's the shit. But it's an alien skull, but they are still humans worshiping it. It is just a different religion, It's it is off-worldly, but isn't God or any. They're otherworldly, right? I don't know. I feel like so. It's I have this kind of really real life theory that I hope that just it's all. I want it to happen in our lifetime when we figure everything that's going to happen out. But I know it's most likely not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen while I'm alive. But man, these answers would be so fucking cool if I could just pop in a room with 13 aliens, and hopefully I'm not going to do the Kate Blanchett thing and try to learn everything. I'm going to be like, no, I will. Maybe that's a good question. What would you ask if you delivered the skull and you were able to ask that council? I don't know what you want to call them. What would you ask them?
It's funny you say this because I always tell people, I'm like, dude, I hope when we when you die and it's over, there's someone either up whatever's out there after. I hope there's someone, or you either get to sit down and basically watch a movie of okay, well, all those things that this is what really happened. And every time the thing that I just first come to is what really happened to JFK. And it's I know there's got to be something better to ask, but that's just always the one at the front of my mind.
To know
what actually happened to JFK. And it's
I need a final fucking answer. Give it to me.
I really have to feel like I know I could come up with something that either pertains to me or pertains to something more. And there's got to, but that's just the one that's my. If you said that and I had 2 seconds to say it, that'd be the first thing that I would be able to spit out because it's just the one that's always at the front of
right.
Oh man, when you get to find out everything that's ever happened in the world, that's the first one.
Hey,
and I don't know why.
That's my boy. That is my boy.
I gotta have a better answer than that. There's got to be something interesting. But that's just
it would really suck if you wasted that question. They were like, no, they got it right. Lee Harvey Oswald did that shit.
I'd be
no.
Dang, that would really suck. It's just it is as it is. Yeah, they're like, no,
that can't happen. That can't happen.
You wanted for more, but sadly,
yeah,
and they're like, well, now we melt your brain. You lusted for the unknown, and
is that the idea? Is it that she asked for everything, and that's what melted her brain? I think matter
it's the hubris. I think it's the hubris that she thought she could take all of the knowledge. I think it's the amount. I don't think it's just any knowledge that they give it to her. I think the amount of knowledge they give her literally fucking disintegrates her.
She learned everything, and in order to learn everything, that's the whole universe. I guess so. Yeah, that was. I don't know what a fucking She got a high there for a second, though. Imagine that experience before you die, though, because...
Before I talk about, she has a monologue or like expositional, whatever you want to call it, at one point in this movie that's incredible. But I want to talk about how when she gets, disintegrated, burned inside out, whatever, what the hell is Mac doing in like the treasure room? Like, dude just randomly decides like, nope, I just want to die with the treasure. Like, he had so much time to grab like 10 more things, even like 10 more like very generational wealth generating type items. All he needed, and this dude randomly just laid on the ground, limp as ever, and just said, "Nope, I'll be okay." What do you mean, dude? Like, you're just he like the greed, I guess, is the idea.
He
like,
knew he deserved to die.
To go with it.
I think they're going for. I think they're going for like two different forms of greed with Cate Blanchett and Ray Winstone.
And,
you want for too much, and it will, you'll die. Like it'll kill you to. I don't know precisely what I'm trying to say, but like it.
No, I get what you're saying.
It's not strictly above your station, but like above what all humanity deserves or needs. I should say needs, not deserves.
Should know your lane. It's like the classic Indy trope of the MacGuffin or whatever power we're looking for. It eventually destroys the villains and the enemies, but then Indy and all of them, they don't really they don't gain anything from it, but they gain the knowledge that it exists, and kind of, they didn't use it, but it is that sort of respect thing after, and that's, I love that Indy trope of how just your ambitions or your outlook on the same exact situation can completely, like, one is evil and one is good, and that's I don't know, I love that is classic Indy, and so it's there. It's like there is a lot of classic Indy things that are here, and I even after talking through it, like I still don't even know if I can pinpoint exactly what it is about the movie that isn't quite there. And
it's weird, man, because they catch it. Like, there are times they catch it, like that lecture, or like I said, monologue, exposition, whatever you want to call it, with Irina when she's trying to get Indy to look into the skull. And it's like just the most Cold War, like Red Scare mongering.
We will infiltrate
like, fear,
you from
like,
the inside and change you from without you even knowing. Like the whole like.
I am become death, destroyer of
my
worlds.
God! First of all, that the little like I literally put like Leo Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I know that guy.
Did Nuketown? Is this the origin of Nuketown? Or did Call of Duty come first?
These places exist. This is how they tested nukes.
Because I'm trying to think, like, Joe, I get what you're saying.
The Call of Duty map that is, it's almost exactly like the colors of the houses. Yeah, like it was Nuketown. Nuketown was Black Ops 1.
This is before Black Ops. It's got to be.
It was Black Ops 1.
I was 8 years old. That doesn't
had to have been. So okay, so yes, right. so Nuketown is literally an Indiana Jones reference. Well, a real world reference but like I'm pretty certain like they built this city.
No, it's definitely similar. Like I said, I think like this is a pretty carbon like cookie cutter thing like that like used to get done for these testing sites. First of all, Joe, I need you to talk how we've gotten this far. What that sequence, man! Like you had to have just loved that, right? I mean, like the car
nuke?
Trying to outrun the nuclear blast.
I mean, come on!
In a freezer, hurtling through the air, outpacing the car.
The little detail, the lead lined freezer, or refrigerator, and then I love that. It was showing you can't escape it.
This is one of those things that people fucking hated from this movie. That he manages to survive this.
Okay. Well, yeah, he would die in real life. Sure, it's a nuke. It's a fucking nuke. Like, but it's Indiana Jones. What the fuck? Like, what are we doing? Do you want him to die in this middle of the movie and just get
that's fucking awesome, dude. Like, whenever it's like, everybody cover your eyes and don't look up until 10 seconds after first light, because you'll go fucking blind.
The way that they like frame it, where like you're zoomed in on Indy in the town, and he's realizing, and then they zoom out, and you can see the town in the distance with the tower and the nuke just sitting there with like. There's something engraved on it. I couldn't tell. I didn't catch what it was.
Oh yeah.
But like, just it's like, oh fuck, here we go.
But a perfect.
I
like
love
in the
theater,
tension
building.
I guess.
Yeah.
It felt like they were showing it to be like, here's the reality of like what a fucking nuke would do. Because why else why else does he show up in a random nuke town? Like, I feel like it's just like, here's a visual reminder that it's like the shockwave. It's, I don't know, it's just a...
Well, it's like time building for me. Like, historically speaking, it's like, this is what was going on. Like, that's why she references Oppenheimer. Like, we were scaling towards the first taste of like nuclear fallout war. Like, it wasn't just like, oh well, we'll just go drop an A-bomb once or twice on a town, and like, you know, obviously that's devastating, but
not to mention at around this time Oppenheimer had been ousted from government for being a supposed Soviet spy.
So
you know, like it's funny to see her reference Oppenheimer specifically when they have such a significant historical tie that didn't actually exist. But it's cool to, it was cool to see that, because I mean, like, she's going for the next step in that evolution after nuke. So like, it's kind of like we see the destruction that a nuclear bomb can cause at the beginning of this movie, and she goes later on, whenever she's like, the man who created your nuclear bomb, we're doing something that's even worse than that. You know, so it's, I've always taken it to be not only a period establishment, not only being like, and check out what nukes are capable of, but like, that's the power of the crystal skull and more, you know, like that's what we're going for. And I think that's it's an effective story beat. I love the shot of him coming up on the hill and seeing the mushroom cloud and stuff. Like, that's fucking epic. It's awesome. I love the very
scrubbed and then getting scrubbed down.
Yeah, the guy scrubbing his crotch and him being like, "Hey, buddy, stay up here." You know, like I love that. It's so much fun, and I think it's funny to see him getting the grilling from the CIA operatives. I think, you know, he's like, man, I'm loyal to my country. Fuck this. I fought the Reds. Like, it is what it is. And ultimately them being like, yeah, fine, you're Indiana Jones. It's cool. But don't rub your war record in our faces. You know, like that whole thing. I love it. But
yeah, like, that was like, he's earned a lot of medals or whatever, but has he really earned, or does he still deserve them, or something like that? Was like a line I felt like they throw it in there, and I'm like, well, you know, you're talking to, man. Like, maybe kind of like a cigarettes thing. It's just been so long, you know. It's like, yeah, I don't know, but it seems like he's kind of still been doing his thing. Like,
he's been steadily doing stuff between World War II and this now. Is what it seems.
But he's on it. So, I mean.
There was something that happened in this movie that I'm I didn't remember it, first of all, from like original, but I'm really hard pressed to rack my mind to find a time where I've ever had a Wilhelm scream on TV, but dubbed with like the actual face. Like, I don't know if I've ever actually had to see someone face on that close up express
whenever
the Wilhelm scream. It's a dub.
Like, whenever Mutt is riding through the library and the guy's face is right there.
It's I mean, like, it's me to this right now, like, close. And I mean, and that's
you're spot on. I don't think I've ever seen a Wilhelm scream done that way.
I was so shook when I saw it. I was like, I feel like as a kid, like, I knew that scream. I should have like picked up. Like, how did I not remember this? Because this is so singular. Like, I have never pick it up.
How did I not pick that up? That is kind of
Joe. It's right before he says the whole like, if you want to be a good archaeologist,
you gotta get out of the library.
Wow, Because but you're right. Every Wilhelm scream, like they're falling into a pit, or you just see it's just like one guy in the distance,
or something. Like you may not see it for a variety of reasons, but I don't know. This was like
That's funny.
I could not think of another time I had ever seen it where it's literally just the guy doing it.
It's cool that we've talked about this movie for as long as we have, and we haven't even arrived in any capacity at my favorite part of the movie, which is Marion Ravenwood.
When the movie gets good from and no qualms really from that point. But
I love Karen Allen. She is my performance of the movie. I love the way she plays Marion in this. There's a couple moments, like my line of the movie is, like whenever she's like, there must have been other women after me, and Harrison's like, they all had the same problem, and she's like, what was that? They weren't you, honey. And he climbs out, and she sits there, she's like, and she like rocks back and forth, like smiling and stuff. Like, I love that. That's a brilliant choice.
I mean, you can see there's resentment, obviously, in some capacity. But, like,
they can't help it.
In the same way that, like, yes, Indy has done things, obviously, like, for me, like, Marion's always been the best love interest, the only one who I ever felt like actually, like, had the juice with Indy, like, compatibility-wise, like, the way they, whatever. It's like, but do you ever at any point feel like Indy is, like, someone that you, like, couldn't forgive, I guess? Do you know what I mean? Like, you as, like, someone, like, an audience member, like,
gotta forgive.
Do you ever
man.
feel like
it's like you'd have to do something really
it's so
fucked
real
up.
that like yes, as much as she despises him, it's like he just has this like magnetic, and she does too. Though that's what's great is it's not like just like she's trying to and has to forgive him, which she does. Obviously, he's the one that's kind of done and whatever. But I mean, like. He had reasons why he didn't think it would work, and whether those were voiced or not, like, he can't resist those either. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, clearly she has the forgiving to do, but, like, she can...
Well, and I think it's cool that neither of them ever, like... There's a cool sentiment in this movie about love in general, how... Marion did fall in love with another man, and he died, and she loved him, and he raised Mutt, and it was a great relationship. Him? I introduced you. Like I loved that whole thing, but like the fact that I've always been of the mind that once you've fallen in love with somebody, you can that doesn't just. It doesn't just disappear, bro. Like, like once you've had someone in your heart and you love them, they have to do something fucking unforgivable for that to go away. Like that's, and I love the way that when he comes back into her life, they can't resist it. Like, it's like they come face to face again, and it's like, there's no question from then on. They're like, oh, well, it's almost like the second they meet up in that camp, they're like, we're gonna get fucking married, like it's that was kind of how it went. It felt like, and I loved that. I love married. Like, I would go so far, and this is a big statement coming from me because, boy, do I love Han and Leia. I don't think Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford have the juice that Karen Allen and Harrison Ford have.
Ooh, dang! I think you're right though. Oh, that's so sad to say.
But I also think the composition of the characters themselves are, like, so different across.
Yeah, it's
like,
100%. It's a completely different chemistry. Yeah.
And so I think that, like, as cool as they always try to make Han out to be, like, that's what makes the whole, like, I love you. I know. Like, that, like... Like,
the dynamic
Harrison,
is definitely a different
Indy,
thing.
Though, it's just different. Like, yes, as much as they build him up to be this cool and suave, like, guy, like, they also dumb him down. Like, especially in this movie, sometimes he's really klutzy in this movie, like, showing his age a little bit. Like, they clearly riff on that, like, yes, like, obviously Harrison Ford is older, therefore we'll make Indy act a little older, just to, like, keep up with, so that way you can't be like, well, Harrison Ford's old. Why is Indy able to...
Yeah, right. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
No.
But, like, I mean, all throughout, though, like, they constantly, like, have this, like, where talked about going back to the first couple movies we talked about, where like Indy is just this inherently like chaotic energy about him, and like Marion plays off of that. That dynamic is just so much more like fun to watch, and I think it's more relatable. Like, when have you ever like interacted with a woman on the level that like Han interacts with Leia? Like, I've never tried. I've never tried or have it in me to like be so like cool, like
not yet. Almost been frozen in carbonite and had to tell my love.
Well, and that's why I'm about like I think that the chemistries that I'm talking about really speaks to the talent of a director. Spielberg is able to get something out of Karen Allen and Harrison Ford that Lucas and Marquand are not able to get out of Ford and Fisher. However, Irvin Kershner in Empire Strikes Back absolutely is. You know what I'm saying? Like, Leia and Han's chemistry in Empire,
that's true,
matches
like
this, but it's
thinking about Hoth, for sure,
and Bespin, like and Cloud City, like
because like I've read on things like Harrison Ford's talked about. I've read and I've heard things about like the behind the scenes chemistry of that Star Wars cast, and it's like, how are you not able to get like those two to just be the most magnetic like chemistry on camera for all three of those? You know what I mean? Like, how is that not the takeaway I have, given just what I know about how much like Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher had chemistry wise, you know what I mean, off set and everything. Like, it's just so bizarre.
They got it here. That's a crazy. I would never have thought that, and especially coming from you too. Just like loving
because
Leia.
Leia's my favorite character, like, ever. Period. But like, there's something that Ford and Karen Allen have that, like in Raiders and in this movie, like, it's astonishing. They have far, far, far less screen time together than Ford and Fisher ever do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's
there are arguments. Like, I went kind of the flip. I gave Marion the character because like when she came in, it was just like, finally, like this was the comfort in the like indie kind of what did Marvel just call it? The anchor bean. Indy's definitely the anchor bean of Indiana Jones, I guess. But like it felt like for this movie, it was really nice to have Marion in here and her being like, a good life. I lived a really good life without you, you know, and like it was good. But then but then at the same time, just being like, well, I know I'm falling for him as I speak these words out of my mouth, and you're like whenever he does climb out of the truck and like he, you know, they weren't you, honey. He's just going to work. Fucking punches the dudes out.
God, that's why I mean, like, I love Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford is probably the best performance in the movie, but there are just specific choices that Marion Ravenwood made that make me, or that Karen Allen made, that makes me so fucking happy. Like, whenever he does say that, and she's just kind of like,
she kind of
like giggles to herself. There's a point, like, after they go down the waterfalls, and she's sitting on the shore with the steering wheel in her hands, and she's like, and she's just like laughing maniacally. Like, I love that. It's just so, and I agree completely. I think Marion Ravenwood is the anchor in this movie that makes it tick towards the back half. It reinvigorates the movie in a way that it really needed, because we were getting to a point where I was like, I don't want to watch Mutt the rest of the time. It can't just be Mutt, you know. Like, I need something else. And she's the saving grace for sure.
Well, one thing I really like that they're able to do with specifically these two is like, think about from the moment she's introduced, there isn't a ton of downtime. In all honesty, like almost all, and this isn't just this movie, they do this trope in other movies too, but it's just so effective with these two, is where it's like a lot of the background character development or like the interaction between those two that really moves the needle of that relationship happens when like one or both of them are in imminent peril. Like, you wouldn't think that works. Like, how do you properly build up anything? But it's because of like the dynamic they have, and that what the peril puts on stakes wise, where it's like, we may be dying. I have to let this, like, I either can't let this thing go and I want you to hear about it before I go, or B, it's like I want to hash this out with you and like make sure you know this is how I feel before I go, or
Right.
whatever it is, or like just the intensity and stress of the moment like lashes them both out at each other, and we uncover this like whatever, like it moves
Like
the needle of that relationship.
Mutt
It's
is
something
his
that,
kid. Like that was
inherently
had to be said.
You wouldn't think action weaved into these character development things should work, but it just the chaos that those moments bring and what that does for the back and forth between those two, it's just magnetic. Like it's you can't
the downtime. The downtime for Marion and Indiana Jones is being in a snake pit, ready to face their imminent demise, or sinking into quicksand. I know it's not quicksand, but
that bit is so funny, man. Like
it depends on the viscosity and the blah 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 blah. It's like shut up. Like it's like it's like
now that he's his son, he's like, oh, I can't wait to just grandstand and tell you all the little things about knowledge.
No, I love it.
And like,
I love it.
Oh, just grab the snake, Dad. No problem. I know you don't have any fear on that, but
call it a rope. It's a rope. It's a rope.
He's like, no, I think I can feel the bottom. Yeah, no,
dude, it's such a good bit.
And that moment is why Harrison Ford is as good as he is. Like whenever he's sitting there and he's like, I think I'm getting close. I think I can touch the bottom. I think my feet are almost there. You know, and they're like, there is no bottom. He's like, yeah, there is. You know, like it's so perfect that like what's keeping him from panicking, like. He's panicking about the snake when he is going to sink to his death, which is
he'd rather die.
Fucking funny. Yeah,
he would rather die than just to touch a snake to save his life.
It's funny because you call back to like all of the times, and obviously he's been afraid of snakes for like the majority or all of the franchise. But like if you remember in Venice when all the rats are in that tunnel, he's like literally not giving a fuck. He's laughing about the fact his dad never could have done this because he's deathly afraid of rats, and then he's. Dance on your own dime, will you? To Mutt when the scorpions are all over.
There was a Kyler moment.
The tale as old as time.
I was watching the movie and I felt like, Kyler. I don't know. Maybe not you would like this, but I felt like you talked about it in every movie before. You're like every time that we're given like an insect or a rat, it's the most amount that you've ever fucking seen ever, you know, and the ants.
Did it again.
These ants, dude.
Ants.
Like, there's this childhood fear that I've had from King Kong, the Jack Black 2005 King Kong, whenever they're down in this pit and it's like this sucky thing with teeth that like slowly eats somebody. And I'm like,
Andy
I know
Serkis. Yeah.
Oh, okay, then fuck, yeah. But like, I knew it would never happen.
Eating thing?
No,
it eats him.
Eaten. Yeah, and I'm like, if that were to ever, that's like one of my worst fears, to be like slowly eaten by something. But then this, I thought that it was gonna be like a slow kind of whatever, but like the second, like I just like someone just dropped in
and take him.
Like,
oh my god,
he just got like kind of like eaten. It was nuts.
Well, dude, like. These things are horrifying. Like when there's a scene when the first one gets on her and she smacks it and she pinches it and it's like just the goopiest, juiciest
it's
thing.
like
whenever she crushes it between her knees and it splatters on the camera.
Oh man, like wow. There is some very good action though, and I will say there is a couple scenes where it kind of loses me. Like I know one scene that it's caught a lot of flack is like the swinging scene. Like that is ridiculous. Like he's keeping up with cars on a route that he doesn't. He's mapping out like Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover, plotting
Tarzan.
Take this angle and like fucking no. You would have been like 20 minutes behind them. Fuck off. But besides the point, like. There's the scene with the blade where they're mowing through the Amazon forest, and then like the blade goes in the middle of the car, and then,
the visual effects on the top half of the car getting ripped off are fucking seamless.
That is actually wow. Now that you say that, I mean, it fucking it rams right through that thing, like.
Well, and then like the car launches and falls on top of their car, and like that, like
was that VFX or was that a That wasn't a
They-
or I guess it could have been a miniature or something, but like
It
that.
could've.
They do a
but-
good job. They do a great job.
I mean,
in
you
this
see
movie.
all
Like,
four
it's-
of them in the car. You watch the thing mow off the top of it. We do not cut. There's nothing that happens there. And then you see all four of them without the roof of the car, and you're like,
They literally
that's
get up.
really,
Yeah.
really good.
Wow.
Like, it's super good. Like, so there are obviously points where like I love it doesn't look as good as previous Indiana Jones movies, but I really love Mutt versus Irina with the swords on the cars.
That was
Um,
dope. That was
I love that sequence. I love the way Marianne is like, all right, lead with your front foot, riposte. I love that whole. She's like, Mom,
This isn't
a
a
match.
Mom.
Yeah, I
Like,
love
nope,
it.
It's worse. It's
And-
for your life. Figure
And
it out.
it's one of my favorite things too. Whenever Indy's like, he's even doing a fighting thing, but he looks over and he's like,
Proud.
that's
that's
my fucking
real.
boy
my
right
boy.
there.
That's my
I love
boy.
it. I love
So-
it. Yeah.
So we've talked about how, like, throughout this series, like, it tends to mimic or mirror some of the things going on, whether it's Lucas or Spielberg. I've got to know, like, does Spielberg have a son, like, around? Because, like, there are some tropes in this movie where it's like, oh, yeah, he's doing the, like,
Yeah.
dad thing. where it's
Spielberg
like,
got a girl pregnant, didn't
It's-
know.
Dude, no. Like, the part where he's trying to shine the flashlight and he can't put it in the right spot and he yells at him about it. I'm like, oh, man. Like, dude, I was that kid. I
Funny
remember
enough,
that. Like,
Funny enough, the Spielberg self-insert in this movie is Mutt.
He's the kid?
he is
Yeah.
not, though. Oh, I see.
Yeah, Spielberg is Mutt, and Indy is his dad. Dropped out of school to pursue what he loves, which is literally a beat in The Fabelmans. Which his dad goes, you know what? If it's making you unhappy, you need to do what you love. I understand. I don't love it, but it's what you need to do. Which is literally a sentiment Indiana Jones has in this movie. The villain who he sword fights on the back of the car has the exact same haircut as Mitzi Fabelman, which is who his mom is in the Spielbergs, the Fabelmans.
Okay.
Like it's
I gotta
Okay.
watch this movie.
Oh,
The
you have
Fabelmans-
to watch The Fabelmans.
Oh, dude. The Fabelmans is so good. So good. It recontextualizes literally everything Spielberg's ever done. We've talked about it every week. Every week there is something that I can go, this connects directly to The Fabelmans.
I'm checking
Yeah.
it out.
It's,
What's it?
you know-
Am I gonna have to rent it, or do you know if it's on anything?
I think it's on something.
Okay, I'll look. I can find it.
But yeah, no, it's well worth your time. It's just a really good coming of age movie. It's obviously autobiographical. The kid is Sammy Fabelman is Steven Spielberg and how he grew up. It's really, really good. But yeah, no, like that was what was interesting connecting that was that the self-insert, even though Spielberg at the time of directing this is obviously closer to Harrison Ford's age, his self-insert is Mutt, which I thought was funny. I really appreciated that, especially considering it came from an era that he grew up in. We opened The Fabelmans on January 10th, 1952 or whatever the fuck, 1950 something. And this is an era he has a direct connection to. It's not his dad's era.
Mm-hmm.
It is his. He grew up during this time, and I think that comes through to a degree. Especially my favorite sequence in the movie is the bar or the diner into the campus car chase.
Mm-hmm.
I love whenever he's like, "Hey Mutt, hit this guy. Hit him as hard as you can," and he knocks the shit out of the jock. The greasers and the jocks come up against each other, and then you get that fucking
This greaser.
bow, bow, ba-dow, ba-dow, bow. Like
It's
that
shake,
music
rattle,
kicks
and roll,
in.
I
Yeah,
think,
dude.
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
dude,
Yes,
it's
and I
awesome.
fucking love it. I love it. It's so perfect. They hop on the bike. They go. Harrison Ford climbs through they got the bus and the car. He climbs through the back of the car, back onto the bike, and that whole thing. I love that whole sequence. And they go through it reminded me if you go to school on a big college campus, when I was at Columbia, when I was at Mizzou. I would constantly imagine how I would have this car chase done. on that campus. I was like,
all the columns, dude.
Yes, all the columns. Yes,
crazy.
yes. You were circling the columns. You know, like that. Like
yeah.
I'm like I had that shit mapped in my head how it would go. It was like
beautiful.
I loved the idea of mapping that out.
It. Yeah, I would.
I
a car chase in my campus would last a total of 2 minutes. We would get from one end to the other, and we could do it. Probably it'd be more on scooters or bikes if we were to do it here. But no, that's the more I've talked about the movie, and the more like I think I was very, very harsh initially because I mean right now I've given every movie. I think even I don't know what I gave Temple of Doom. I think I might have still given it a 5. On Letterboxd. I'm not sure. But this was the first one where it wasn't like a clear, like, boom, like I'm giving it a 5. But now that I'm, like, I love so much shit of this movie to where, like, I was way too harsh on it at first. And I'm glad that now that I have just talked through it, I've, like, sat through all of these action sequences and the stuff that I did have fun with, the tropes that I thought were kind of whatever at first, but then it's the classic stuff. I don't know.
No, and it's interesting because, like, the one so far that is the most comparable in terms of quality is Temple of Doom, which in terms of filmmaking, I would say Temple of Doom is a better made movie. I think this is I have a more fun time watching this movie than I do most movies anyway. So like it's really hard to like I have all the Indiana Jones movies out of 5 on Letterboxd. Like this is. We were talking off mic prior to this about like Star Wars and how for a long time it was like they couldn't do anything that I didn't like, and you know we're reaching. Indiana Jones is still that for me. Everything I love, it's still there, and it always will be because they won't take it further than this. And I really appreciate that. But when it comes to the ranking of Indy, it's like obviously Raiders and Crusade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be anything any given day. Like, I love all these movies, so it's hard for me to be like, well, I definitely like Temple of Doom more than I like Crystal Skull, you know? Because it's not how I feel. Some days I like Crystal Skull more than I like Temple of Doom. I love Dial of Destiny. I can't wait to revisit it. It's definitely the one I've watched the least since it came out last year. It's also the longest, which might be the only problem with the movie is that like it does not need to be 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever the fuck.
Okay. Yeah, this one was right at like 2 hours, right? This one like
yeah,
it was I don't know, kind of. I didn't think I would cut anything out. I don't think I'd add anything more. This one it didn't feel like it was egging on for too long at all.
One interesting thing about this movie that like I just kind of realized is like
34.
Ox is not a character we have any knowledge of but prior, you know what I mean? Like that's one thing that I love.
Hurt.
Well, here's the thing is like Indy has shown so much respect and dependence for his sidekicks always, and even when he gets crossed, like you can see how bad it pains him. Like he's crossed by Mac and it kills him, and eventually he gets crossed so many times by Mac, he's just like, yeah, whatever. Like you can see when he's like, I practically spelled it out. I'm in the CIA, and he looks at him like,
yeah, right.
Yeah, all right, whatever.
Okay, sure.
But like, there is such a like all throughout these movies, it's weaved so seamlessly how much he respects and needs his like sidekicks, his people who like he leans on them. You know what I mean? There is a definite like respect and dependence there, and so I really like that. Like, even though we don't know Ox, like this is something that like a lot of movies get knocked for. It's like you can't just throw some character that we have no background knowledge of, a character that means nothing to us, and then make us care. Like that's what's, you know, I feel like that's something sometimes people hold against movies when this type of thing
specifically
happens.
Franchise movies.
Yeah, but it's done so well because, like I said, you know how much Indy cares for the people that have done him well and looked out for him, and people who his respect for. I mean, knowledge is the thing, right? Like, Ox has so much knowledge on this thing, and he is so, like, you know what I mean? There's that.
Well, and like, there's that layer in this story where Ox practically helped raise Mutt. Mutt looks at Ox like a father, you know, ever since his dad died, you know, he views, and there's another really cool beat where Indiana Jones looks at him and he goes, like, do it for Abner. like talking about Marion's dad.
Man,
you know, like that's really cool. Like there's a history that they imply with Ox, even though we've never seen him, that ends up making him a really, really powerful character. Like the sequence where they're sitting across from each other by the campfire, and you know, he's waving his hand around like he needs to write something, and he's repeating the same lines over and over. Beautifully photographed. I love everything in that camp. The way the light shining on Indiana Jones, his shadow on the tent wall. You know, that whole thing. Them being silhouetted there. There's I love unnatural lighting. I don't care. There's a moment wherever they are sitting right there, silhouetted, and Cate Blanchett is right in between them. Her face is lit up, and they are silhouetted. Mm-hmm. Like, that doesn't make sense. There's nothing but it looks fucking awesome. You know, like, it looks great, and in the moment, you don't think anything of it unless you're going, wow, that's a really well-lit shot. You know, like, it looks really fucking good. It's not like you're like, that doesn't make any sense. No, you're like, that's pretty. You know, that's how things should look. I love the way it's photographed there. And there's, I really, really love the way it's photographed when they go into the cave after they go through the waterfall. And it's got that like shimmering. This is something we were talking last night about 2000 Spielberg versus, you know, what has been 80s Spielberg, what we've been covering of late. This really washed out, bright, white lighting that's coming from behind them is classic aughts Spielberg. Like Minority Report, War of the Worlds, even Catch Me If You Can has a degree of this. And it's mostly because of the photography of Janusz Kaminski. I think him kind of starting to collaborate with Spielberg versus Douglas Slocum, who did the first 3 Indy movies, might be what's causing the disconnect in visual language for you. It's a whole new photographer shooting the movie, and obviously it still has Spielberg sensibilities, but there is a difference there. Now Kaminski's been his cinematographer for a long time now, since Schindler's List, I want to say, so like right after Last Crusade. Okay. So that might be causing a little bit of a disconnect too in terms of what visually it's emulating for you.
He still shines through though. I don't know. They're like,
oh yeah, he absolutely does.
I'm trying to think of where it was, but there was some like tarp. I told you I texted you the shot that it was like Indy his shadow was on like a tarp or something that you could see through, but then you could still see him through his shadow, and it was just kind of like his
They
silhouette.
were in the camp. It was right before he was about to get mind fucked.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that shot, I mean, it was whenever you can use a shadow and like have the hat, you know, the silhouette of his hat, and then he just kind of like was in his aura, it kind of felt like, is kind of what they were
well,
shooting.
I mean, like the opening, the very, very opening, the staging of that sequence, whenever they arrive at the army base and you see the hat on the ground, you watch the feet step up to it, and then they pan up to the shadow and then put in the hat on. Like, that's fucking cold, you know? And I love the color grading there. I sent you an example of what it really reminds me of, which is the early 60s CinemaScope, Great Escape sort of vibe that they were going for. And I think that is mostly what this movie is going for. It obviously blends a lot of modern sensibility, but that opening sequence particularly reminded me of early 60s, late 50s, which is what the movie is set in, you know? And I think that goes a long way for me. But yeah, man, I love this movie. I have a real soft spot for it. And while I can recognize it's not as good as the first 3, I love it every bit as much. So yeah, I don't know that I have much else to say. Is there anything we feel we've left out?
I think we've got it all.
I'm trying to think, like, I mean, most of the big sequences are like things that I felt like I had to hear from Joe about or like just talk about. I feel like we've got to.
There's not a character we're forgetting
I agree,
about.
Like, it's so weird because like I can remember watching this and being like, yeah, like the 3, even like when I watched it when I was younger, like when this one came out, like, yeah, there's something here. And now, like, I watch movies in a little bit different vein, scope, and stuff. I can't. I'm with you guys. Like, I can't place what it is. Like, I think what the answer probably is closer to is it's just like it's really hard to capture that lightning in a bottle over the course of, I mean, what at this point was 30 years,
30
give or
years.
take.
Yeah,
I mean,
almost
like,
30 years. Yeah,
it's really hard to capture that after such a I mean, and it's still there. Like, I don't mean to say that like this movie misses the mark of being Indiana
Mm-hmm.
Jones and an Indiana Jones movie, not even in the slightest. It's just like I don't know what quite is, but like there is a little something, and like sometimes I felt like maybe it was just like I don't know, like some of what makes Indy so fun for me to watch like back in that time is like the 80s style of like just filmmaking and like some of that, like, and that's not to say that the new age stuff doesn't look great, because the, like we've talked about, the VFX, the action sequences, what they were able to push the fold and do with this new technology and stuff was they got their money's worth for sure, like hands down. But I don't know, like I can't place it, but like don't ever think that like this movie misses the mark of being Indiana Jones. Like I still have
right.
like we've talked about, I still have a fucking blast. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's very much so enjoyable. Like
No, yeah, I'm
what
with
I
that
feel like,
100%.
and I can't remember if I said this during the first one, like when we talked about the first one, or if I just thought this, but like I feel like before having watched this one again and just kind of like a generalized thing, like I felt like the way people talk about, or some people talk about Spider-Man 3 as like, oh, like this movie, like if you just kind of turn your thoughts off for a little bit and just enjoy what's being thrown at you, it's like fun. And like people try to claim that that's like a fun movie. Like that's what it is. It's not so much like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
obviously coming off Spider-Man 2 in this mega, like, obviously one of the better comic book
Superhero movies, yeah.
adaptations, yeah, like I don't think it's anywhere near like what people think. Like to make that statement, if I did say that, was not at all, like it doesn't hold up at all. Like it's,
Hmm.
if you're gonna dump
Close,
Spider-Man
but
3
not.
down as just being a
Mm-mm.
fun and enjoyable watch, like yes, you can do that with this movie, but there are still all of the things you know and love about Indiana Jones very much
Right,
still present. Like
right.
it's not, don't dumb it down to that, I guess is what I'm getting at, is like,
No, I get that. No,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, like, it's a good fucking time, man. It is a good fucking time, and I think that that's ultimately what I want. Like, because Last Crusade spoils you a little bit. Like Last Crusade, you absolutely get more emotional payoff than you do in any other Indiana Jones movie, even the ones prior to it, like by like a lot. Raiders, this has a lot in common with Raiders in terms of story structure and the way that it plays out and the way that it, like, it's almost formatted precisely the same, almost the exact same runtime. There's a very, very cool mirror to the first one, and I think that that's because it was supposed to be the last one.
no,
Like
it's because it's because the Ark of the Covenant made a cameo in this movie. That's
it did.
actually
That's
It
why.
did.
true. It was still chilling there in Area 51. What do we
Uh-huh.
have there? What do we have just in a box, chilling in a warehouse?
Did anybody else like the fact that like when they're doing that sequence, like Indy just I don't think he drives the truck through, but somebody drives a truck through like an entire section of boxes, and it's like I just watched you pull a box that
Mm.
has like a otherworldly metal that has to be the densest material of all time. It's
What
also
did we?
magnetic.
Yeah.
Like
What
what
did we
It
was
just
also
crash
it
crashing
through
through
also
there?
there?
causes a fucking explosion that like
Yeah.
throws the people on the other side. Like they go, man. It's and that's like that's why like I love this movie, man. There's so much I have such a great time with,
Well,
and
and like I don't know. I mean, I think like once you make a movie this far after, like what you're really asking for as a fan is like how can you do something different? Like what can you do? And they do, like they go for some things, and there are different things, and like here's the thing, like to come back to the whole Spider-Man 3 illusion type thing is like that movie was messy. Like that's why it's not, like that's why people want to try to call it just like, oh, if you just want to watch and have fun, like like this movie is nowhere near as messy. Like sure, I guess some people may not like that it gets a little bit far-fetched, but like it always has been. Like we talked about this, like sure, the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant feels a little more real than what this is. But like
there was a demonic,
I mean, not exactly,
not demonic, but
like,
a human sacrifice
not as much
with
as people would like to make.
They
out,
skydived out of a plane on a
life
raft.
Yeah,
and landed on a snowy mountain.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then with no control, managed to just not
wash
get
up on the
by
shores of
India.
Hey, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's always been far-fetched. So if I guess people, I feel like people are just trying to get their gripes in somewhere, and that's an easy out. I feel like that's an easy one that everyone would be like, "Oh no, you're right," mean, but it's a different far-fetched.
Yeah, there's something. I can accept that maybe tonally you don't like the way this blends with Indiana Jones. You know, that's fair. You know, like, it's always been far-fetched, but the type of far-fetched this is doesn't fit the tone of the character. If that's your gripe, that's fair. Not just that it's far-fetched. You know, that's how I feel about everything. That people are like, this is unrealistic. Oh, yeah. You are watching a movie.
Newsflash. Yeah, this is fiction. This isn't a documentary that you're watching. Yeah. Crazy enough, but usually we do watch movies to escape the reality in certain things, but man, we love to force it back in. That's for sure. I'm glad I'm no longer one of those movie watchers. I feel like no longer
cinema sins.
Yeah, you know? Used to be. That's for sure. But
it's been fun watching like to show the age of when we recorded this, the reception of Trap from this past weekend. Been hysterical to watch people go, this is incredibly unrealistic. I'm like, yeah. Sorry, like
isn't it a horror movie?
Like you were getting into?
Oh, that's the concert. Yeah,
the concert.
It's a horror movie.
Where an entire concert was set up to catch a serial killer. That premise in and of itself doesn't happen. You know, like you are entering.
Well,
as far as we know,
I was going to say, did something happen that I am unaware about?
I was going to say it's not exactly what you said, but there is like an iconic thing in like the 80s, I think, where like the Washington Redskins, now the Washington football team or whatever, but
Commanders or whatever.
The Commanders, they did a thing where like anyone with outstanding like warrants or something like that, they basically sent fake free tickets to like all of the existing address. So all these people had to do is like just not be still living at the existing address of where, and almost like they literally brought in like hundreds of people to this like what's supposed to be free tickets to a game, and there's no game. They just
and they arrested them
when they show up.
Oh yeah, my god!
Like they busted people doing that. So, like, obviously not the same as a concert, but, like, loosely, like...
Yeah, concert set up to catch a serial killer.
Yeah, no, not quite. Like, these weren't violent criminals, to my knowledge. Like, we weren't going after, like, you know, people who we thought had violent... Because I think there was a game. Like, obviously, like, to get it set up, like, football games are every Sunday and you get 8 home games. So you can't just be like, oh, they play today. And it's like, well, it's Saturday.
Well,
like,
right.
No,
it's
like,
Tuesday morning.
So like,
you know, like,
obviously you're not bringing violent criminals to like, oh, I'm taking my family to the Redskins game. Hopefully there's not thousands of criminals showing up today.
Yeah,
But this concept is not totally out of the realm of possibility.
No, I get what you're saying. No, like but it's inherently far-fetched. Not impossible, but far-fetched. You know, like and like that's why I'm like, I don't know. There is like, and yeah, there's some stuff that doesn't make sense. Have a good fucking time, man. I don't know. Like
even with the Tarzan jungle swinging, like that's the one thing where I'm like, okay, maybe it's a little too over the top here, but now that I'll rewatch it, I'll be like, fuck it. Why do I care now? You know, like honestly, like if he catches up with them, whatever, he's Tarzan swinging with some monkeys.
That's the fucking dream.
That's honestly true. If I could do that.
That's all I thought when I was watching the sequence. I was like, God, that fucking rocks.
No,
you know?
Let's be real here. Like, in reality, like, you're getting murked by those monkeys in an instant. So, like, if I can have a,
But they were
if
like,
I can
they
go
were
join
like,
them and they like,
you're one of
fuck with
us,
me, though,
you know?
They
Like-
knew. They
Bro,
knew. They
come
they
on.
fucking
Well,
knew.
it's redemption for the monkeys. The only monkey we've seen in
Nazi
Indiana Jones was a
monkey?
Nazi.
Oh
You
my
know, like they were like, we need to
And the
show
other
that
one
not all
got killed
monkeys
by
are
a date.
bad.
No, there's
Yeah.
the one that gets killed by a date. They've all
Yeah.
had pretty bad.
Isn't that
fates
the
in Indy,
the
really.
Nazi monkey?
That's
gets
the
killed
same.
by the
That's
date,
the Nazi
right?
monkey.
Oh,
though.
it is. Oh,
It's
I
the same.
guess you're right.
Yeah,
I
it's
guess
the
you're right.
same
Sorry,
same
sorry,
monkey.
sorry.
Oh my
No,
god!
it's all
thinking
good.
There was one in. I was thinking. Yeah. No, you got
Wow.
No, same monkey.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, and even whenever Shia LaBeouf looks, this was one of the moments that is probably a little self-referential, is probably a little self-aware. Whenever he locks eyes with the monkey almost looks like the exact same monkey.
It
you
is
know?
right.
Like,
I think because it's like a very
the
famous
monkey would be almost 30. If they
yeah,
were
no
like,
way,
they
then.
could have like superimposed him in from an old shot from Raiders. I would believe that.
Can I tell you something? Can I tell you
what's that?
something? I'm honestly convinced that if I look up this monkey from this moment, it's gonna be the monkey from back Night at the Museum.
Yes,
It
Oh,
he is a
literally
famous monkey. I
looks
swear.
like he is superimposed. You say superimposed, and that's what's like tilting me because like I'm almost positive there's a shot in Night at the Museum where like that same like when he is superimposed in there, it's a downward type angle. And I swear in Night at the Museum there's a scene where the monkey is like I think he's like looking all innocent or whatever, kind of like that one, and then he goes and does some bad shit to Ben Stiller, but like I swear, man.
Dang it, I couldn't find anything.
Like
I
even
was
the
trying to
lighting
scour,
looked
but
exactly as it did in that scene.
it did. No, this monkey. Because now I don't think it's the same monkey as the one before, because that is a long time difference.
Okay,
but
maybe
this
I'm wrong.
is a
This
monkey that
looks different. This looks different. Maybe I'm wrong.
But he's
just
been
really
in
looks
stuff
like
that we know. This is an early 2000s monkey. I don't know. You're right. He is a
We've seen this
familiar
monkey
looking
before.
monkey.
We have seen
Yes,
him before.
he is familiar, and that is weird. But
Wait, hold on. He has history. This monkey from Night at the Museum has history with Steven Spielberg. He was actually. You want to know something funny? You've seen
What's that?
him before in a movie we've talked about in this podcast.
really, a monkey,
Spielberg.
a Spielberg movie?
Was it Raiders?
He is Benny from The Fablemans. This monkey.
Oh, it's the same monkey.
There's a
my
monkey in the
God.
Fablemans.
Yeah, remember? Mitzi brings home the monkey, and she names it Benny.
It's
And
also,
everyone's like, "Oh, you're mentally unwell."
Oh my
also
god!
from Hangover 2, funnily enough.
Holy shit! Yeah,
my
famous. I looked it
God.
up. The monkeys in Crystal Skull are all CGI. There are no real monkeys.
Oh damn! I really thought he looked like the.
But that's the
that
thing
dude,
is that
though.
because it's CGI, I think they are emulating that original monkey.
Could be.
Is what they're going for.
Could be, but wow, it's the
but,
Fableman's monkey. That's kind of, that just jogged my memory back of that monkey back in that movie.
Yeah,
But okay, wow,
lands on Paul Dano's head, and he's like, "Who's this?" Yeah, no, I love that part. It's Benny, and they're all like, "Oh, let's get you some help." Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. You'll get that eventually.
It sounds great. The movie is not all monkey and crazy. It's a lot.
It's a really, really good family drama. It makes me cry a lot, actually. Yeah, no, I loved this movie. I thought it was so much fun. But I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap it on up. I'll do the plugs, and then we can rate this bad boy. If you would, head to Twitter, follow @Cinementalists, spelt the way it is in the name of this podcast. It'll give you any updates on what we're up to. We're an offshoot of the Penny Bloom podcast, which currently we would have just wrapped up coverage of The Penguin on HBO. It's so we're kind of in between things. We're looking forward to Dune, the Dune television show coming up soon. Very, very excited for that. Probably going to be the next thing we cover, I assume. Feels like me and Joe are both pretty excited for that. We are doing Fulcrum, a Star Wars podcast. We're gearing up towards the end of Season 2 of our Rebels rewatch, and we will be covering Skeleton Crew in December. Very excited for that. But yeah, head to Twitter, follow at PennyBloomPod for overview, anything, everything we might be discussing, Cinementalists specifically for this show. Leave a 5-star rate and review wherever you might be listening, and download. I would appreciate it greatly. But yeah, with that, let's rate this thing. How are we feeling about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? One number to encompass every single feeling you have about this movie.
Impossible, but I'll try. I don't think I am out of 10. That's for sure. There is hesitation. A 9 even still feels a little bit too high for me, which is maybe not. I think I'm in like the 9. I'm around an 8.75, a 9, or a 9.25. That's kind of where I'm hovering. I wonder what we gave Temple of Doom. I guess we all gave Temple of Doom a 9.
9 straight
just
up.
a 9 straight. And
I would give it a 9 straight then. How about you, Kyler? How are you feeling?
I was somewhere between 8.5 and 9. I think 9. I'm willing to go for the 9. This movie, I don't need to think about it. It's Indy.
It's fun.
I think
it's lovable. The ending really, really anchors it for me. Like the ending, not the alien spaceship taking off, but the wedding ceremony and them walking out, the door blowing open and blowing the hat at his feet. Like, man. I love that.
I love that about that, because that is like a super, like, it's just Indy. Like, that's just what that feels like an Indy thing to have happen. Like, it doesn't. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily like that or care or really notice that the way that I just oh, that's such an Indie thing to have happen.
Like the doors blowing open from the wind and it blowing the hat to his feet. Like, it's so perfect. And then him picking it, I just adore it. I love the ending. Him grabbing it on his way out, Ox in the crowd. Your dad would be so happy or whatever. Like that whole thing. Like, damn, man, it really hits. It really does hit.
It's really funny that we talked about how much you like the opening sequence where the hat rolls up to Indy and he puts it on and it's all super cool. And the movie basically ends with the same type of shot,
the same mirror.
Hat rolls foot. Oh, it's Shia LaBeouf. Oh,
nah.
No, it's not.
Nobody will ever be Indiana Jones besides Harrison Ford.
I'm there.
My bad. I know we were wrapping up there.
You're good.
A little piece there.
I think I'm there as well. I can't put this anywhere. I can't put it below Temple of Doom, really. So that's
where I was at. I'm like, I can accept that it is filmmaking wise maybe not as good, but there's very little else about it that I think you could say isn't better. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's important. So.
Yeah. Well, easy on the math there. I'll agree with you, boys. 9. So that's just we got 10s and 9s. That's all we've gotten for Indy. So a pretty good record so far.
Peak franchise. And I'm excited to cover the conclusion next week. We will be back next Friday, the first week of December, if I'm not mistaken. I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving. By the way, that was yesterday. Be safe on Black Friday. But next week we'll enter a new month. We will be discussing Dial of Destiny, and I'm very, very excited for it. So come on back. There'll be a first watch for both of you, correct?
Yep.
Definitely me.
I'm very excited.
So
it'll be the third time I've watched it. So marks the least I've watched an Indiana Jones movie. So
which is more than any I've watched. Any amount of them.
Yeah, there you go. So very excited for that. We will be back next week with Dial of Destiny. And with that, I was Colton Robertson. I was joined by Joseph George. Thank you very much, homie.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And thank you very much, KBZ Kyler Barnett.
Absolutely.
And remember, they weren't you, honey.